Hello again. I was last having trouble installing the valve body bolts to the casting. I don't know why, but the second I turned the camera off, they just went right in. The next step is the filter. This is one that came out of it. It's probably the original. It's not really much more than a strainer. It's got a screen in it. The front pump has a grommet in it from the factory. The rear doesn't seem to come with anything. I took the filter seal off of it was a 4T65E Hydromatic and glued it on. So I wanted a seal for that too. And it's held on with this clip that attaches between two screws, which was not holding at all when I took it apart. In fact, when I took the pan off, the pump was like this. So I don't know how long it had been running with no filter whatsoever on the rear pump. So my first thought was it had a whole bunch of contamination inside the valve body and it was all destroyed, but luckily it was all still good. I had to bend this thing a little to make it work because it goes over two of the screws on the valve body. And I believe that's that. The oil pan. Now on this one, it didn't come with one, but I'm adding a magnet to the oil pan. It's debatable with many people whether or not you need this or if they cause more harm than good, but every time I take a pan off that has a magnet, it's always just full of stuff on it, so I'm going to use it anyway. Brand new gasket. going to take a while to get all the bolts in, tighten them, and torque them down. I'll just pause it for a while. Okay, we're getting to the final steps of assembly here. Also, a couple of days ago I put these vents back on. These are held on with 2 screws on each side. Torque converter actually has fins in it, and it sucks in air to cool the torque converter because this car doesn't use a transmission cooler. Instead, it uses a bypass line. It goes from the output to the pan. And this hole right here, this is actually output from the torque converter. The pump pressure, when it reaches a certain point, it diverts oil to the torque converter. Once that reaches pressure to a certain point, it releases through here, which goes either to the bypass or to a cooler. If you're not running a cooler, do not just plug these off. You need to run something in it because pressure is supposed to drain off here, and a lot of weird things can happen. You can blow out seals or stuff like that. So just hook something up to it. I plan to eventually install a transmission cooler on this car, but for now I'm just going to put the bypass back on because it was working. Oh, there it is. If you're replacing the transmission in your car, that's the time to upgrade the cooler or install a cooler, because otherwise everything is always full of oil, and if you take this off, it'll just be a mess everywhere. And that's as far as I'm going to go with it. The rest of the components needs to be attached to the engine to finish, but I'm going to go over a few components anyway. This big hole on this side is for the dipstick tube. This is also the filler tube for the transmission. It doesn't have a separate filler plug anywhere. According to the manual, this holds, the 6-cylinder models hold 9.5 quarts. So I usually start them about a quart low and work my way up from there until it reaches the full level. But that's just me. and this end bolts to the engine. On this side, I have installed this. This is a, well, this fitting, like I said, has line pressure coming out of it. This is an extension for it. This is where you hook up a pressure gauge if you're testing line pressure. This line is not really necessary. I don't know if it came with it or not. You could just put a plug in this hole and do the same thing, but you need to plug this hole somehow, otherwise once you start up, all the fluid will just pour out of it. And this hole, the shift linkage attaches to. This is the shift lever. Park. Reverse, neutral, drive, low. And as I said, this is the throttle lever, or throttle valve, the breather. Oil's already pouring out of the tail shaft. And the last component, the torque converter. This is probably the original that came with the car. This one is pretty interesting. It has drain valves in it, one on each side, so the oil can be changed while in the car. It's got the two teeth on here. It meshes with the front pump, so when the engine runs, it turns the pump at all times. This one has the ring gear attached to it. The flex plate on the engine is just a plate attached with 4 nuts. Like I said, this plate back here with these openings, these are fins. They actually pull air in through the outside for cooling. And I'm not going to install it just yet. I'm going to install it when it's ready to bolt to the engine. Reason being, first thing you need to do is fill this with fluid. And these, it takes a while for the fluid to get in. You fill it to the top, wait a while, fill it up again, wait a while, fill it up again, and then just throw it on, and whatever spills out, you clean it up. And between that time and the time you bolt it to the flex plate, it puts strain on the seal and the bearing, which I don't want to do. But it goes on like so. Just like that. It's probably pumping fluid out somewhere, I'm sure. But that is it. That is the 1961 Fordomatic 2-speed aluminum case.